Hello, welcome to Banani and Me. We're going to spend a little time learning English together. This lesson is for students who are beyond the beginning levels of English, who want exposure to some grammatical structures and vocabulary which are a little bit more advanced. So I was thinking about the topic of stress, which we all experience at some point in our life. So then I'll look at what the dictionary says. I'm using Webster's Learner Dictionary, and it says this: stress, a state of mental tension and worry caused by problems in your life, work, etc., or something that causes strong feelings of worry or anxiety. Who has not suffered from stress? So I was thinking, when we describe stress and the options that we have for our behavior in our attitudes and our behaviors themselves, I was thinking about the language that goes along with that. And there's quite a bit of different vocabulary words that go along with that. So let's learn a few of them together. So we can talk about stress as we have stressful times. Like we could say, these are stressful times. Or when someone is getting ready to give birth, that is a stressful time in their life. When someone is at final exams from college, at a stressful time in their life. So we can say stressful times. But we also have other words that we can use. We can use words such as issues, right? Stressful issues in our lives, like paying the bills, like health concerns. Stressful conditions, like if we were involved in a hurricane or a tornado. Those are stressful conditions. Also incidents, stressful incidents, the loss of a loved one, the loss of a job, things that normally might make us feel anxious or worried. And circumstances, anything that we find ourselves in, or that we even sometimes invent circumstances to sometimes make our lives more stressful. So we're going to try to use these words in this lesson and beyond this lesson to be able to talk about times without saying the word times all the time, because that would be rather boring. And if I were writing about stress and stressful times, I would want to use a variety of these terms. So why don't we repeat them one more time? And remember that it's incidents is a noun here. We could also see it as incidents with a CE, but this is the incident with a T. So repeat: stressful times, stressful issues, stressful conditions, stressful incidents, things that happen, and stressful circumstances. Very good. So then we have also verbs that we use instead of saying the word manage. How do we manage? How do we manage stressful times? How do we manage stressful incidents? We have some other verbs. So do you use all of these verbs? Let's see. So we think about manage. How do you manage stressful times? How do you manage stressful times? Manage. How do you handle stressful times? These are all synonyms. They all mean the same thing. We use these all interchangeably in English. They're synonyms. Handle. How do you handle stressful times? How do you navigate? How do you navigate? How do you find your way, like navigate, like in a boat on a sea? How do you navigate? How do you steer your way? How do you navigate? And then we have the expression deal with. Deal with also means manage. How do you deal with it? How do you deal with stress emotionally? How do you deal with stress in your behaviors, in your actions? And finally, we say cope with. How do you cope with stress? These are all the same words. I know someone who has lived in the United States for 19 years, and they asked me just this morning, what is cope with again? And they know all of these words, and they probably know it in context, but this person doesn't use the word cope with. So the idea is that we learn new terms, so we put them into practice, so they'll be part of our own vocabulary, and we'll sound more like a speaker, a native speaker of English. So why don't you repeat after me? Manage stressful times. Handle stressful times. navigate stressful times, deal with stressful times, cope with stressful times. Very good. So you could put these words that we had before and these words together to make phrases, right? I handle stressful times. Stressful times. Up this way. I handle stressful times. I navigate stressful conditions. I deal with stressful circumstances. So if you want to stop now and write some sentences using those forms, that would be very helpful. And what I'm inviting you to do is actually practice those forms a bit. And then I'm asking you to do 4 things that all sound like are. So your turn would be to do this. Number 1, research. Go online. I think if I were typing online, I would type in tips for dealing with stress, or how to handle stressful times, or the best ways to get through stress. Those are the kind of terms I would use if I were searching online. And I probably would find lots and lots of lists by lots of people who are doctors, medical doctors, counselors, teachers. I could read ones about at school or in the workplace. So do some research and you write up a list of stressful things. Then you're going to respond and you're going to talk about your list. So actually, when I went back at this list, I don't know if you noticed, but there are a couple of interesting things that I wrote here. I wrote manage, handle, navigate. And did you see that there were a couple of these that had another word with it, a helping word? I don't say deal, I say deal with. And I don't say cope, I say cope with. You must put those words there. These are verbal phrases, deal with, cope with. So I put them at the end because I wanted to put these together and then have these be together because they both have with. So I was thinking, what if we took the first letter of each of these, M, H, N, D, and C, and I created something that I could be stressed about that begins with that letter. So I'm going to try that with you, and I'm going to tell you what my words are. So I deal with stress. No, I'm sorry. I manage, I'll start in order. I manage stress about money by spending less, by not watching home shopping network programs, by resisting to buy 2 of something when I only need 1. I manage stressful times with money by doing that. H. I was thinking a way that I handle and something that can be stressful is holidays. Because maybe you are with people that you're comfortable with, but it's still stressful to get ready, to prepare, to buy the food, to have the invitations. Maybe you have issues with people at holiday times because it is so stressful. Maybe people don't get along. So holidays can be stressful. So I handle holiday stresses by being patient, by preparing well ahead of time, by not expecting me to do a perfect job at the holidays, by remembering people who can't come and still sending them some sort of note of love. That's how I handle holidays, if they can be stressful. N, how I navigate stressful news. We can hear news on the TV or on the radio or on our cell phones, on internet. That's very stressful. So how I would handle stressful news is by limiting my screen time, or by recognizing that everybody in news has their opinion and they want me to pay attention, and maybe they want me to be stressed. So maybe that's not the whole story, or maybe there's more I need to learn about it. I also might handle stressful news that's when I'm happy, when I hear news that's happy and I'm around somebody who's going through a hard time. And maybe I just don't want to say, oh, wow, 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 when I know somebody's really struggling. So I might handle what they would find as stressful news, even though it's good news to me. D, how I deal with disappointment. Disappointment. Maybe I was expecting to get a promotion at work or a raise, and it doesn't happen. I was expecting to be able to go on vacation and I get sick. So how do I deal with disappointment? I deal with disappointment by trying to make the best of a situation, by not blaming other people, by trying not to be too angry or to wallow. We say wallow when I go too deep and too long into my sad feelings. I would try not to do that, by trying not to do that. And finally, C, how would I cope with stressful stressful, confusing times. How would I cope with stressful, confusing times? I might ask questions. I might resist jumping to conclusions. So if times were confusing, I might recognize that I don't have all the answers, or someone else might not have all the answers for me. So in most of the ways I was responding, I was saying this form, I manage, right, stressful situations and stressful issues with money by blanking, by saving, by spending less, by watching less TV that invites me to spend money. So you'll find that the form that we use for the rest of the sentence is by blanking. So I'm going to be using these words, making up my own words from the first letter: money, holidays, news, disappointments, confusing times. And I'll be using this structure. So you can do the same thing. So back to our list. You've gone online and you'll be looking at research to talk about ways that people handle stress. And you might hear things like meditating, taking a deep breath, praying, talking to a friend, not isolating, getting advice from specialists. Then you'll respond and you'll create your own list with these letters M, H, N, D, and C. And remember, in this case, deal with and cope with had two words. They were verbal phrases. Then you could write sentences for yourself based on all of this. And finally, another R sound, research. Research. Ask a friend. Ask a friend how they handle stressful situations, stressful times, stressful conditions, stressful incidents, and stressful circumstances. Because the reality is we're going to have all of these times in our lives. And you might look up some of the quotes that people say regarding how people handle times of stress. Usually times of stress end, and so we can be hopeful of that. And usually times of stress are opportunities for us to see what we're made of inside, and we also need to think about how we behave in times of stress for other people. So I hope you learned a lot of English today. And I really hope that you use different words in your speaking and in your writing. These words here, when you're talking about stressful times or happy times, but use those words. And I also hope that you would use some of these synonyms for manage. that you would get a wide variety of different ways that you could say this in English. And it's certainly helpful to write these sentences and to practice speaking them out loud, and then to ask your friends some of the ways that they handle stressful times. I hope you enjoyed this lesson, and I'd love to hear how you're putting it into practice. Bye-bye. Bye for now.